the border radius property is used to add a rounded borders to an element. Here you can see a 4 types: a normal border, a round border, and a rounder border, and a roundest border. Here you can specify with an element where you has to be used with a normal, round, or a rounder, or a roundest. The difference between these you can see here. Then Css margins. The Css margin properties are used to create a space around the elements outside of any defined borders. With CSS, you have full control over the margins. There are properties for setting the margin for each side of an element: top, right, bottom, and left, where the margin can be set some like in a width and a height. You can mention with the 4 properties: top, bottom, right, and left, like mentioning with the pixels. Those are some of the properties. You can see the margin is shorthand property for setting all the margin properties in one declaration. When margin bottom sets the bottom margin of an element, margin left sets the left margin of an element, margin right sets the right margin of an element, margin top margin of an element. Then we are moving to an CSS padding. The CSS padding properties are used to generate a space around an element's content inside any defined borders. Like we are seeing in a padding, we can refers to any space between the content. With CSS, you have fully control over the padding. There are properties for setting in a padding for each side of an element: top, right, bottom, and left. Same as in a previous slides. We are setting in a padding with the division tag: padding right 50 pixels, padding right, bottom, and left, and setting in a height and width in CSS. The height and width properties are used to set the height and width of an element. The height and width properties do not include a padding, borders, or any margins. It sets the height width of an area inside the padding, border, and margin of the element. It does not contain any padding or borders. It sets height and width inside the padding and the border, not include with the padding and border. It sets inside the padding and the border. You can see with the division tag, height is equals to 200 pixels and the width is 50%. The background color, the powder blue. The Css box model, it is also very important in a CSS. The term box model is used when talking about design and a layout. The Css box model is essentially a box that wraps around every HTML element. It contains the margins, borders, padding, and the actual content with whatever we written in the box. The simple thing, the content, padding, and the border. The content of the box where the text and images appear. The padding clears an area around the content. The padding is transparent, that it will be invisible by the browser or not invisible by the browser. Let's see in the next slides how the padding in the CSS box model it will work. Then the margin clears an area outside the border. The margin is transparent. Now you can see an outline offset. The outline offset property adds a space between the outline and the edge border of an element. The space between the element and its outline is transparent. Here you can see outline offset. Here we have created a box element border and the outline offset is 15 pixels. Then we have created in a border. Margin 30 pixels, border 1 pixel solid black, and a outline 1 pixel solid red. Outline offset 15 pixels. You can see the similar output here. Text color. The color property is used to set the color of a text. The color is specified by the color name like red. In previously told, the colors can be in color name, color code, hexa or RGB values. The text formatting and the example color blue or H1 color green. Text formatting you can see. Text alignment, where the text will be the left or right. The text alignment property is used to set the horizontal alignment of text. A text can be left or right aligned, centered or justified. The following examples shows a centered, aligned and the left and the right aligned text. Left alignment is in a default alignment where when we have to use when the right alignment we wants to, and we have to put in the coding part. Example, the header part is the center and second header is the left and the third header is right. The CSS text alignment direction are the properties. Direction specifies the text direction, writing in a direction. Text align specifies the horizontal alignment of text. Text align last, it specifies how to align the last line of a text. Unicode, we don't use this, most probably use it together with the direction property to set or return whether the text should be a overreader or the support multiple languages in the same document. Vertical align sets the vertical alignment of an element. Transformation, text transformation, the text transform property is used to specify uppercase or a lowercase letters in a text, where it can be used to return everything into a uppercase or lowercase letters or capitalize the first letter of each word. For example, the paragraph uppercase, text transform uppercase, paragraph lowercase, text transform lowercase, and capitalize. One of the property of a text transformation is controls the capitalization of a text. Text spacing, text indent, letter spacing, line height, word spacing and a white space. The example for paragraph, text indent 50 pixel. CSS text spacing, there are some of the properties. Left spacing, line height, text indent, white space and word spacing. Letter spacing specifies the space between the characters in a text. Line height specifies the line height. Text indent specifies the indentation of the first line in a text block. White space specifies how to handle a white space inside an element. Word spacing specifies the space between the words in a text. Text shadow, the shadow effect. The text shadow property adds shadow to text. In its simplest use, you only specifies the horizontal shadow 2 pixel, the vertical shadow 2 pixel. The text shadow, example, the text shadow, the code. The text shadow property is the text shadow specifies the shadow text effect added to the text. Font style, the font style property is almost used to specify italic text. This property has 3 values: normal, italic and oblique. Normal, the text is shown normal. Italic, the text is shown in italics. Oblique, the text is leaning. Oblique is very similar but to italic but less supported. Font style, example, P normal, font style normal, italic and oblique. You can see the difference. The font size, when we are setting in a font size to an HTML element, this will be useful. The font size property set the size of the text. Being able to manage the text size is important in a web design. However, you should not use the font size adjustment to make a paragraph look like an headings or a header look like a paragraphs. Always use a proper HTML tags like H1 to H6 for headings and paragraphs. Font size you can set because using the H1 to the H6 is a better way to referring to a size. In a header within a paragraph, when we are using in a font size, you can use within a pixels by representing in a font size. Links with CSS, links can be styled in many different ways. The 4 link states are a link, a visited link, a H over link and an active link. A visited link, a normal and unvisited link. A visited, the link user has visited, it will be differs. When the user has been visited to a link, it will be displayed as a different color. A H over, a link when the user moves over it. The active, a link that moment it is clicked. Lists, yeah, you can see with the HTML ordered and the unordered lists. We have explained in the HTML session. In HTML, there are two main types of lists, order and unordered lists. The CSS lists properties allow you to set a different list item market for ordered lists, set different list item market for the unordered lists, set an image as an list item marker, add background color to the list and the list items. Unordered lists, you can see here, it will represent with the dotted coffee, tea, Coca-Cola. In ordered lists, it will be represented with the numerical values and the Roman numbers. Lists, you can see, you can define a list by a UA.A list style type circle, ULB list style type square, the upper Roman or lower alpha. CSS layout, the position property where the position should be declared. The position property specifies the type of a positioning method used for an element, static, relative, fixed or absolute or sticky. Example, div static, the position is static, border 3 pixels solid and the color is hexadecimal code. Some of the position properties are: bottom sets the bottom margin edge for a positioned box, clips an absolutely positioned element, left sets the left margin edge for a positioned box, position specifies the type of position for an element, right sets the right margin edge for a positioned box, and the top sets the top margin edge for a positioned box. And CSS combinators, it is also very useful in the CSS. A CSS selector can contain more than one simple selector. Between the simple selector, we can include a combinator, dissident selector a space, child selector a greater than, adjacent sibling selector a plus, general sibling selector tilde, division P a background color yellow. Some of the combinator selectors, element, example division P, element greater than element greater than P, element plus P. The description, division P, selects all, paragraph, element inside the division element. In division greater than P, selects all paragraph elements where the parent is the division element. Div plus P selects the first paragraph element that are placed immediately after a division elements. Paragraph tilde UL selects every unordered list element that is preceded by a paragraph element. Opacity and transparency, the text, how much will be displayed, how much will be looked up, we can specify to that. The opacity property specifies the opacity or transparency of an element. Transparency image, the opacity property can take a value from 0.0 to 1. The lower value, the more transparent. Navigation bars, having easy to use navigation is important for any website. With CSS, you can transform boring HTML menus into a good looking navigation bars. Navigation bar is equal to list of links, simpler way. The navigation bar needs to a standard HTML as a base. In our examples, we build a navigation bar from a standard HTML list. Navigation bar is basically a list of a link, so using the unordered list and the list elements make a perfect sense. Example, for unordered lists, a default ASP, the linking of an HTML pages. Here you can see the example. Drop down content, create a drop down box that appears when the user moves the mouse over on an element. Drop down, write 0. Forms, designing a forms. The look of an HTML form can be greatly improved with CSS. Example, input width 100. You can see the example with the drop down. Australia country. Style sheets and HTML. Style sheet referenced by link. HTML elements are called as an external style sheets. Style sheets can be embedded directly in the HTML document using style element. Head, title, internal style sheet.html title. Type, text of CSS. Header 1, header 2. aqua background color, close style and a close head. Most HTML elements have a style attribute, value of list and style declarations. Let's see in the last CSS advantages. What are the advantages of the CSS? Makes a website more flexible. CSS is reusable. Change the style sheet to change the design of many pages. Easier to maintain. Cleaner HTML code. Separate styles from an HTML tags on page content. Consists a look across the entire website that is easily maintained by changing the styles in one place. Some of disadvantages: not uniformly supported by all browsers. We are written with another language we can use. Some of browsers will support it, most of all support it, some of a literal not supported. Firefox adheres to CSS standards more than a Internet Explorers. For this course we use Firefox, and we can use any browser. Better way to use the Internet Explorer. It will support and it will get the easily output. And this is the session where we have discussed the CSS, come up with an CSS from introduction to the main part, where how we are creating the drop down menus, the font size, the recreating in a font size, how the border width and height has been set it. You can work it out and you can mention in the comment box. Further, we will come up with the more languages. Until then, thank you, and thank you for watching this video.